Kratos is indeed addicted to chaos, and Sony continue to share that chaos across consoles and now PC, including the Steam Deck. Around 2 years after the console exclusive launched, we have an updated and enhanced PC release, ported by Jetpack Interactive, who also ported the 2018 original, and as expected, they've moved the engine over from DirectX 11 to DirectX 12, again with support from the Sony Santa Monica studio. Has Kratos and that Santa Monica engine continued to age like a fine wine. When it comes to the PC gaming market, the player base and demands are all very different from the console roots this God of War was born on. With such a wide range of hardware and configurations, the customization and user experience are vital to enable the widest reach and choice available. With that, Jetpack have excelled here with an instant and clearly labelled shader cache timer at the bottom upon first boot or driver update. You can start the game while it runs, but best advice is wait the approximate 8 to 12 minutes it takes to complete. Now, based on info from the developers themselves, this is a full offline shader comp done by the developers and shipped with the game, so PC players are benefiting from a console standard here, meaning you should only stutter when the challenge becomes too great and not through the need to create a shader potion all of a sudden. A minor annoyance is the now standard forced PSN login, which will limit the audience the PC version has, but more on that at the end. The menu system and options are also a pleasure. All changes can be made in real time in this DX12 supported engine, and the menu goes transparent on each graphical option, allowing you to quickly see what each option does to the visual quality and performance instantly. The choice is again extensive as per the standard for Sony's first party PC ports. Frame rates over 120 FPS, yep, 32:9 support on it. DLSS, FSR3, XESS and frame generation are all here, along with the engine's own custom TAA, which aligns to the PlayStation 5 version of the game. In the option you get a preset of low, medium, high and ultra, which I love, as it takes me back to the good old days when you just chose from the menu in a simple hierarchy fashion without max, extreme, psycho and even hidden levels with a poke-like command line. And these stay consistent across the game's selection of graphics choices, which is covered next.
You watching?
Now, starting with what is one of the most important areas for image quality and performance, if you are VRAM limited. The previous game was a last gen game that was ported to PC and only boosted on PlayStation 5. Now, Ragnarok was created with PS5 and PS4 specific versions, hence the VRAM demands are higher, 50% higher on PC as a baseline, bringing over the PS5 4K assets. Minimum specs are 6GB cards rather than 4, and beyond this though, as I've talked about since I started this channel, VRAM and memory as a whole do impact performance no matter what anyone else tries to tell you, with tech sites only recently acknowledging this. Now, this is true again here. Even on 8GB cards, you can be limited. Harking back to my God of War PC review when that launched, I discussed and demonstrated the split pools of RAM, PCIe, etc. issues that impact PC, but not the PlayStation 5. So go and check that out for more detailed overview. Now, even with an 8GB card, the game will likely access around 7GB to use here. And here I've killed all apps on my GPU RAM down to only around 300 megabytes within the operating system, which is the best case scenario. In the game though, it will leave a portion open for operating system emergencies, and if we bleed over that circa 7GB of VRAM, then we page swap with system RAM, which kills performance. Putting that to the test using my RTX 2070, even at 1440p DLSS quality, which is around 960p, at the high texture settings we can be over the VRAM limit, and only performance, which is below 1280 by 720 base, gets us within that, or dropping textures to low or medium. But as you move through the world, this may again just creep back up, and thus frame times are hit, as it has to wait on the data to be swapped in and out over that bus. Meaning even at medium textures, 1440p with or without DLSS, FSR3, etc., This is your hard limit here for 8GB GPUs. A few other settings such as shadows and atmospherics also impact VRAM requirements, so if you are on a 6GB or 8GB card, which is a huge portion of the market, you will have to lower these and or target resolutions accordingly. Recall that the render target, the buffers and material requirements in the game mean it's not just textures themselves that take up all the RAM, but they are one of the biggest. Now comparing them to low and medium and then high is where you notice the high level MIPS. High to ultra is the common boost of MIPS themselves within the frustum, or higher quality across all objects rather than just those closest to your eyeballs. Now for the best balance of performance versus quality on 8GB or lower, choose medium or low textures. For 10GB and above, choose high, and ultra is really for those 12GB plus cards. You know who you are. Now PlayStation 5 runs these textures at ultra settings in both modes, however it can drop to closer to the high level at certain points when it is VRAM limited, which means on bigger GPUs you can slightly exceed the quality of textures, as you can see here on the barrel, which is closest to high on PS5 versus ultra, which is slightly sharper. Models is next, and this impacts geometry and the polygonal construction of objects, along with general clutter and LOD. The hit to performance can be reasonably small, but it does bump up on each setting, going from 5.4% moving from high to medium, and then 5.7% from high to ultra, meaning overall you can gain 11% going from medium to ultra. Low and medium are exactly the same, which makes perfect sense as the PlayStation 5 runs its performance mode at medium, and the quality mode, like all settings, is ran at ultra. Anisotropic filtering with the high abundant and high quality textures throughout really only pays back when boosted to ultra, offering a meager 2.9% on my RX 6800 and RTX 2070. As such, leave at high or ultra, which is what PlayStation 5 runs them at in both modes, as there's not a visible difference to the eye here between high and ultra. Lighting is a clear case of low is a no-go, as it effectively turns off AO and shell shadowing on characters. The hit here though can be quite large. Going from low to medium offers you 5.5%, and then going from medium to high another 1.8. There is no visible difference, and there's no performance difference going from high to ultra, meaning overall going from low to ultra offers 7.5%, meaning just leave it at high or ultra and be happy with that. Now shadows is the single biggest hit on performance, just like the first game. The quality of the shadow cascades is great, and even medium looks good and sharp, but it doesn't have any feathered penumbra filter that high adds in, and then ultra refines that even more with an improved filter pass and more shadows. Spotlights are also improved here, but PS5 quality mode is actually higher than PC's best with spotlights, being very high resolution above ultra. Sun shadows are a match and PS5 quality and ultra. Spotlights are also improved, or at least different here on PS5's quality mode. They look far higher and sharper than the PC's best, with spotlights being very high resolution above ultra. Sun shadows are a match with PS5 quality and ultra, and performance mode runs shadows closest to medium on both spotlights and sun shadows, as you can see here, but it is slightly lower. Notice the reduced shadow inside the bucket, which can offer a welcome 12%, but going from low to ultra is a whopping 22% boost. Medium is the sweet spot, and ultra if you have the GPU and RAM to run them, as this is the next biggest VRAM effect over textures. Reflections, and another setting that runs way above ultra on PS5's quality mode, as it uses the engine's integrated ray trace parallax cube map tracing and then fallback BVH proxy geometry to increase reflection quality and accuracy. This means that we get correctly aligned reflections that fall outside of the Raymarch SSR pass, as you see here with the PS5 reflections, the higher ceiling and netting, which is missing on PC's Ultra, which only has SSR and non-corrected cube maps. This is a hybrid ray trace reflection pass that effectively falls back to SSR when that data is available and combines all these rays to improve that quality. We know that from the team's own GDC talk on this that the entire step on PS5's quality mode costs approximately 4 milliseconds, which is big for a 33 millisecond target and gigantic for a 16 millisecond one, hence why this is disabled in performance mode where PlayStation 5 now aligns with the high or ultra settings. Now the improvement from low to medium is a longer march into the scene, so more reflections, high improves resolution and some improved surface refraction, and then ultra increases the resolution further. It will be interesting to see just how much this effect costs on PC when the team get their DXR process working for that ray march cube map solution. Atmospherics is another minor one, looking to be really focused on fog volumes and other alpha and potentially particle effects. And in the most stressful sections I could find, we can see that low and medium look very low res and blocky with a 4% gain per step up to high, and then high and ultra look almost the same. Quality mode on PS5 and performance mode lines almost exactly to high or ultra. However, I did notice again that some improvement on the PC version here in the ultra settings on particles, both in the density and the lifespan of those GPU accelerated particles, is slightly higher. So if they are linked, I suspect they're using a hybrid version on the performance and quality modes. Ambient occlusion, I'm sure, is just a broken menu option at this point, as I only saw high show any change in performance which was less than 1%, and it's likely a bug, as it appears to be very minimal in any change, or currently it doesn't work at all on PC. As such, PS5 in both modes look the same, and really lighting and shadows impact the look of this more, including ambient occlusion. So my advice, leave it ultra for that placebo pleasure. Now, tessellation is the final piece and another area that can be very costly currently on PC. Both AMD and Nvidia. In that in-between round portal, we can see the biggest hit to performance of any setting. Some 36% going from ultra to low, medium to high is also a big hit as of patch 3. And I believe the team pulled this back on PC, which leaves ultra, another setting on PC, that is way below PS5 in both quality and performance mode. But this is an issue that actually impacts AMD cards far less than Nvidia ones, with it currently only costing 31% when moving between medium to high, whereas on my RTX 2070 it cost 69%. But this is better than when the game launched, where we can see approximately 12% improvement going from the launch day code to patch 3.1. This is an area the team will have to work on, and it's likely related to the API and driver method in which tessellation is done, which is notorious being very different between AMD and Nvidia cards, and this clearly has been built around the PlayStation 5, which is AMD hardware. Now on screen you can see my optimal settings for both 8GB and then 10GB or higher cards, plus those PlayStation 5 match settings. Using my optimal settings, you can gain approximately 34% in total from the ultra settings with a minimal hit to image quality. No shock, many of these are used by the PS5 in its performance mode, meaning you can take a 45 FPS average up to just over 60 FPS here. Perfect balance between visual quality and high frame rates. No frame gen required. Now remember, there are areas in those inner realms where the tessellation will have a much bigger impact, but I've not included that here. Okay, I'm jumping in now from the future, inserting myself. As of Friday, when I was about to release this video, a new patch dropped, patch 5, and I've tested it, but it appeared to not fix the tessellation performance issues I've mentioned just now. I even cleared the shader cache and recompiled, but noticed the speed was much faster than on first install, and sure enough, some more testing, it was exactly the same as before. But I also noticed that Nvidia pushed out a new driver a day or so earlier. Now, I could have used EDU to do a complete wipe, which is always the guaranteed way of doing it, but instead I downloaded the new driver, as I suspected there might be something to do with what's going on here, as I mentioned about the tessellation and the way Nvidia and AMD work, and that forces a complete rebuild of all GPU caches, and now it was a much slower process as when you first install, and that felt much better. So again, I let that finish, and after retesting, the performance gain was massive, going from that 29 FPS before to 47, so some 62% boost, and that at least fixed it for Nvidia cards at both high and ultra. Medium was far better performance anyway, but it still draws in much sooner than on PS5, but at least now it doesn't tank performance. Also, the The streaming sections I mentioned later in this video, because I haven't got time to edit it back out, have also been significantly reduced, with the streaming in now being far more in line how you would have expected with the PC specifications, reducing those issues you see here and later on, even on my RTX 4090 rig. And finally, I retested all my performance comparisons against PS5 here, and these did not change, and that's exactly what you see coming up, which is the PC being compared against PS5 with patch 5. So enjoy me from the past. I'm off back to the future. And this is true even on my RTX 2070 paired with that 2700 Zen CPU. Now, the PS5's quality and performance mode are matched, as you've just seen, along with resolutions on PlayStation 5 coming directly from developers when I interviewed them for my IGN performance review, along with some counts I made myself, meaning we have a perfect example here to do a full like-for-like console to PC test across CPU, memory and GPU with two Nvidia cards, the Steam Deck, and the closest match to PS5 Pro, maybe, in the RX 6800 GPU.
Whoa, do you feel that?
What's that like?
Anything, everything.
So pitting the PS5 against my RTX 2070 machine, you can see the specifications on screen, we see a huge delta in performance for a few reasons. One is that VRAM, as noted, with 8GB being far too low for 4K gaming here, even using DLSS as detailed earlier. The noted tessellation issues above medium here also can hit hard at certain points, and that's why I recommend medium tessellation currently across all PCs until that bug is fully resolved, which I'm using here. Matching PS5 quality mode, which is 1800p to 2160p ultra settings against DLSS quality at 4K, which is a 1440p base, the PS5 really pulls ahead. At times, we can be 100% faster on PS5 at higher settings and resolutions. A big cost here though is those VRAM limits, and reinforces my point perfectly as to the cost of going over that budget. Now, dropping to the performance mode settings, we also need to dip textures here to medium, along with 1440p DLSS quality, so approximately 960p base, which keeps us within those VRAM limits now, and we hover closer to that 60 FPS target. But we do become more CPU bound at times in this run. We still dip into the 40s though, bandwidth, fill rate and or triangle limited here, but the game, as per God of War 2018, also has a very high VSync cost, pointing to possible CPU sync or memory cost on my 2700. With VSync off, you can gain around 5 to 8% back in some places. That said, using the unlocked native 1440p performance mode on PS5, again we're running here at 120 FPS on the PC as well, we see a similar 40 to 63% boost in performance at higher resolutions with this machine. Now, some of this is the dedicated hardware and CPU work on PS5 compared to PC, and who says consoles don't punch above their weight? Hey Kratos. Now, the RX 6800 can run close to the PS5's quality mode when at 40 FPS, but with a potential 30% boost in resolutions. In this comparison, PS5 is running DRS upscale back to 4K from a lowest bound of 1800p, whereas the RX 6800 is native 4K here, but performance is still better on PS5, although marginally so, with some bigger dips on PC cropping up. Over the run, PC is within 10% of the PS5 at roughly 30% higher resolution, which is far closer than the specs would suggest on paper at least. Performance mode is roughly the same story, with the RX 6800 now running identical settings and resolution, 1440p native for both, but here, shockingly, PlayStation 5 is faster overall, with the PC able to max out that 120 FPS VSync limit here, with the PS5 just being shy within its run of 116 FPS high. But over the run, the PS5 averages higher, and for a GPU like the RX 6800, which has more in common with the PS5 Pro than the PlayStation 5, this is one of the best results yet for the PS5, and it does highlight some work on the GPU utilization and certainly occupancy, along with potential memory and sync issues, areas that could all close the gap if the team have more time to patch and update this version. Now, the engine is very memory dependent, it seems, and it has a tight spin lock sync point within its render loop, and on PC this can present some fixed timing cycles on the refresh, which we even notice on the PS5's performance mode when running at 120 FPS. We can have some prolonged little runs of virtual limits to 80 FPS. Now on PC, these can be CPU and memory bound, making them more impactful. The engine threads well across 4 to 6 threads or so with a main worker thread, but it does not scale much beyond that. Even disabling hyperthreading and boosting clocks makes little difference, and it can be tied to a single core in certain areas. Now the game is far more often GPU and or memory bound, but it does appear more CPU bound on PC than PS5, likely due to the extra work it has to do for data streaming and decompression, and the DX12 API not being as efficient as the PlayStation API. Remember, the PS5 is actually very good at fill rate, which could be another aspect of causing some of the dips here. You can see the engine stresses the GPU, but it's not always maximizing occupancy, where the power usage doesn't quite hit maximum wattage on my RX 6800. Now this performance level is true across all three of my CPUs, aside my 5800X3D, which offers significant boosts over the other CPUs, reinforcing memory timings and cache misses might be a potential cause for some of the issues here. Generally, this makes sense, as the PS5 is built around a very tightly coupled single memory humor subsystem, whereas on PC that can be its specific weakness. That said, just reinforcing how well the game does scale and where CPU can help, my RTX 4090 paired with the 5800X3D can push this game over 120 FPS at native 4K Ultra settings, and you can go even higher using DLSS quality, which gives you image quality that is either the same or slightly better than PS5's fidelity mode. So the game does scale exceptionally well from all three specs here, and it even goes far lower when we take into account the little handheld that can, the Steam Deck. Now, completing my full suite of testing, the little Valve Steam Deck brings the joy of the PlayStation 4 experience in your hand. Yes, you need to make some drastic cuts, which equates to low on pretty much everything, including textures, and a reliance on TAA reconstruction. So, from a 1080p or 800p target using FSR3 or TAA, an approximate 640 by 400 base, but we can achieve a decent 30 FPS rate and even above 60 FPS in the quieter sections, but I recommend the cap as it feels more consistent than an unlocked variable rate. In your hand it looks great and really highlights the exceptional art-driven design the game has, when even at the lowest settings and resolution it still looks superb and achieves the lion's share of the quality and is close enough to that PS4 version to succeed, as quality like that in your hands is very impressive. It can become bandwidth, memory and CPU bound on the small device, and certainly power throttled, but the scalability and quality on offer is a testament to how good the port is across a wide spread of hardware. It's just in that middle ground that the team need to claw back a few percentage of performance to try and mitigate the architectural differences between the PC and console design.
Find you, watch out!
A little over 2 years after the console versions, this Ragnarok sequel doesn't boost the PC version as much as the prior release, simply because the PlayStation 5 version took away many of those enhancements from this PC port back then. It can win on three main areas though over even that PlayStation 5 version. Frame rates can be far higher, image quality can be superior, and your choice of ways to play and aspect ratio are broader. The biggest challenge though is you need a very powerful PC hardware to match or exceed that PlayStation 5 baseline, and we still have a PS5 Pro version which is almost certainly going to be boosted in the next few months when that launches, which will close that gap up significantly here, specifically if PSSR is also brought into the equation. Now it can be done, and overall this is another quality PC port from Sony and their studios, with a very console-like experience from shader compilation, real-time settings changes and fast loading. The enforced PSN login is still annoying, and I feel still hitting Sony's sales negatively, as so many parts of the world cannot create a free PSN login, but they can and do have a Steam account to buy the game. The commercial and marketing benefits this offers aside, I would still prefer this to be a choice outside of online focused first party releases. This shift to DirectX 12 has been a worthwhile effort from Jetpack and does help increase performance across AMD and Nvidia hardware, which was an issue I discussed at length back in my review of the 2018 game, and the reasons why they chose to port it using DirectX 11, which the team have now confirmed in interviews over on IGN with Destin. But this engine still doesn't use some CPUs, and certainly some of those mid-range CPUs, as well as it should, and they could certainly boost this a little more. Data streaming and memory buffers, along with that tessellation issue specifically for Nvidia, are also areas I hope the team can resolve to claw back a few frames across my testbed, and more covered here. But this is a solid, well-built and impressive PC port that can be played from the Steam Deck right up to the RTX 4090 and anywhere in between. And the quality of that experience across all devices is close enough to never ruin the core game underneath. I just wish it had more Kratos than Atreus in this one. And that's it for another deep dive into PC, console, handhelds, and all things video game related. Remember, I am completely self-funded and independent, and if you like what I do here over on my website or anything else on the channel, then remember you can help me by commenting down below, subscribing, hitting the like button, and obviously sharing this video and others where appropriate. And if you really like my content, you can get exclusive and early access to things like this and others over on my Patreon site. But for now, I'm out to go and smash some gods in the face. Until the next one.